12 years old in the summer of 1967, I was one who began to ask questions. And just like many others who are here today and who you will hear from today, but we remember 1967. It was a catastrophic event in this city. And many people point to the destruction that occurred at that time. And there was destruction. But if you only understand that part, then you don't understand the truth. Because the truth is the whole. Because for as many negative impacts that event may have had, it had tenfold positive impact. Today, we have a black mayor in the city of Newark. His name is Ras Baraka.
Believe in Newark.
I believe that he would not be mayor today if it was not for the rebellion of 1967. Sharp James would not have been mayor today in his time if it wasn't for the rebellion of 1967. Kenneth A. Gibson, the first African-American mayor of a major East Coast city, would not have been the first African-American mayor if it had not been for the rebellion of 1967. Newark, prior to 1967, was an apartheid city. It was an apartheid city. It was a racially segregated city. It was a city that had a black majority, but was under the control of a white minority. And it took the manifestations of the civil rights struggle and the black liberation struggle in this city to change that. But it took really the uprising of 1967 to make that manifest. So what happened in 1967 changed the destiny of so many people in this city. And we're here today to observe what we believe to be one of the most important historical events in the history of the city of Newark, the 1967 Newark Rebellion. So to begin, we're going to have Tiffany. Tiffany is the granddaughter of Eloise Spelman, who is one of those that was murdered in 1967. And Tiffany is going to come and lay flowers. Then we're going to read the names of those on the monument. Come on, Tiffany. Give her a hand. Stay right there so they can get a picture. Put your hand on the flowers. Look forward so they can get a picture of you. This is the granddaughter of Eloise Spelman, and her daughter is here also. And they come every year. They come every year. So now we'll read the inscription and names on this monument. This is a monument that was established some years ago when George Branch was the councilman of the Central Ward of Newark. That's right, at the urging of the People's Organization for Progress and other groups and other individuals. We said there needed to be a monument to those who perished in the rebellion of 1967. And as a result, Councilman Branch initiated the effort, and it was completed and of course ratified by the City Council of Newark. And this was obviously established in 1997 because it says, commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Newark riot of 1967, we will forever remember the names of those whose lives were lost. And those names are Rose Abram, Elizabeth Artis, Teddick Bell, Leroy Boyd.
Presente.
Rebecca Brown.
Presente.
Mary Helen Campbell.
Presente.
Rufus Council.
Presente.
William Burr.
Presente.
Hattie Gaynor.
Presente.
Raymond Gilmer.
Presente.
Isaac Harrison.
Presente.
Rufus Hawk.
Presente.
Oscar Hill.
Presente.
Jessie Mae Jones.
Presente.
Robert Martin.
Presente.
Albert Misier.
Presente.
Captain Michael Moran.
Presente.
Eddie Moss.
Presente.
Cornelius Murray.
Presente.
Michael Pugh.
Presente.
James Rutledge.
Presente.
Victor Lewis Smith.
Presente.
James Sanders.
Presente.
Eloise Spellman.
Presente.
Richard Talaferro.
Presente.
Detective Fred Toto.
Presente.
Dedicated by the residents of the city of Newark, July 11th, 1997. Let us now have a moment of silence for those persons who are inscribed on this monument and those whose names are not inscribed on the monument, who also perished in 1967. Moment of silence, please. Power to the people.
Power to the people.
Lift up a little bit. Lift up. Y'all pressing down hard on the guy. Ease up. Ease up. Ease up. Ease up. Okay.
It'll be on Facebook.
Brothers and sisters, thank you all for coming out today. As is our tradition, we're going to ask those who are relatives of those who perished, those that are present, who want to speak. We're going to give them a chance to speak. Then we'll let other folks who were eyewitnesses to what occurred in 1967 to speak. And then we're not just going to talk about the past, Newark of the past, we're also going to talk about Newark of the present and the challenges that face Newark today. And we have other community leaders and representatives of other organizations and leaders of other campaigns around important issues in this city who are here. But let me just say, as an introduction to those who are going to come in a minute, that the uprising of 1967, why do we call it a rebellion? Many people refer to what happened in 1967 as a riot. In the People's Organization for Progress and many others in the Black Liberation Movement, we do not refer to these uprisings as riots. Riots would have been some disturbance that could have been managed and dispatched by the local police in a short amount of time. What occurred in 1967 was one of 1,000 urban uprisings that occurred in the United States between 1960 and 1972. There was not one riot or two riots or one or two rebellions. There were 1,000 urban disturbances, urban uprisings in the United States between 1960 and 1972. In 1967, in that year alone, there were 148 urban uprisings. In the following year, 1968, the year that Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, there were 168 uprisings. And many people think that there was only the uprising here in Newark. If you go to Governor Hughes' special Blue Ribbon Commission report on civil disturbances in New Jersey, every major city, the 27 major cities in New Jersey, had an uprising beginning not in 67, The first was in 1966 in Jersey City. So there were many uprisings, and these uprisings were in response to racial oppression. The racial oppression that black people experienced all over this country, coast to coast. And more, I would venture to say, and this is a guess on my part, Zaid, but I would venture to say that 99% of them were sparked by incidents of police brutality. And this is what happened in Newark, New Jersey on the night of July 12th, when Thomas Smith, a cab driver, was stopped on Fairmount and Springfield, where the new Cityplex movie theater is. That's on between Bergen and Fairmount. At Fairmount Avenue is when Thomas Smith was stopped by the police, was beaten by the police, and taken 2 blocks over to what was called then the 17th Avenue Precinct, which is now called the West District Precinct. And that precinct had a notorious reputation. Many folks believed that Smith was actually going to be killed in that station. And there was a demonstration right there that night. And some of those who were in that demonstration are still alive and still with us today, such as Robert Curbin. But there was a demonstration at the police station after they took Smith there, and as a result of the confrontation between the demonstrators and the police, the uprising, the rebellion in Newark started on July 12th, 1967. And if this had been a riot, it could have been easily taken care of by the 1,500-member Newark police force at that time. But they couldn't put it down. All the police in Newark couldn't put it down. They called in 700 state troopers. The 700 state troopers and the Newark police together couldn't put it down. So finally, Governor Hughes had to declare martial law. See, we know when we hear about military occupation in other places, we know about military occupation. Because we who were here in 1967 were under military occupation when Governor Hughes called in the National Guard. And they said initially that there were snipers that were killing people. But all the autopsies on these people showed that they were not killed by snipers. They were either killed by the police, the state troopers, or the National Guard. And that's in the book that this young lady, that Miss Spellman's daughter is holding here, No Cause for Indictment by Ron Parambo. Nobody went to jail for the deaths of those people. But it was a cataclysmic occurrence, brothers and sisters. 3,000 people were arrested, 1,500 people were wounded, and 27 people were killed. And the uprising in Newark was followed by those in other cities, such as Plainfield, New Jersey, where folks actually got a hold of the armory and seized the armory. Nobody died in Plainfield. And then after that, in August, the following month, was an uprising in Detroit that was so intense that they had to call in the 82nd Airborne. The same 82nd Airborne that was active in Vietnam, they had to call the 82nd Airborne into Detroit to put down the rebellion into Detroit in 1967. So this was a cataclysmic occurrence. And any of us that were living in the city at that time, it was a transfiguring experience for us. And I'll talk later about my own personal experience, but I want you to hear now from the family members of those who perished in 1967. Let me just say one other thing. Most of the uprisings, most of the rebellions that occurred in 67 were sparked by incidents of police brutality. But those incidents of police brutality were like the fuse on a ticking time bomb. It was the oppressive conditions that black people lived under that really were the combined forces that actually brought about this rebellion. As I looked out towards Springfield Avenue, my mind sees things that are not there anymore. I see Scudder Homes. I see Hayes Homes. Hayes Homes is right over here on West Kinney Street. I see Stella Wright Housing Project. In 1967, there were more black people per square mile in Newark than in any other community in the United States of New Jersey. We were compact into what is today called the Central Ward, what was then called the Third Ward. It was the old Third Ward. And through redlining and other discriminatory housing practices in Newark, most black people lived in the Third Ward of Newark at that time. But I just want to underscore the fact that it was the oppressive conditions, the substandard housing, the substandard schools, the unemployment, the poverty. These were the real causes of the rebellion. And the irony is that we still face many of these oppressive conditions today, brothers and sisters. So with that being said, I want to bring forward now Sister Spellman, the